Hello and welcome to the Film Whisperers here on Ben TV, where two movie nerds talk all things film with a contemporary lens. My name is Saj.
And I'm Abs Al-Nouri.
Welcome to the show and thanks for having this conversation with me. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about Cruel Intentions.
Cruel Intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah, 90s classic.
Cult
classic, yeah.
Catherine and Sebastian are manipulative, sibling teenagers who together conspire to create a tale of betrayal in the 1999 cult classic Cruel Intentions when they make a wager that demands seduction without consequence.
Yeah, it's a long-winded, movie with lots of caveat, but it's a cult classic, and I think it was very important for us to, talk about it.
100%. Okay, so I'd like to start with, for 2022, what works in the film. So if I was to ask you two things that you think for 2022 Cruel Intentions still works, what would you say?
The atmosphere of rich people, they are still the same. They haven't, I don't think anybody has changed in their attitude towards money and, being as frivolous and money grabbing and feeling that this is what the representation of old rich people is like. Young people feel they are more likely to have problems in high school. Most of the coming of age and understanding your emotional value is exploring things during high school, which a lot do still.
The problems, are you just saying that the fact that they're showing teenagers with so-called problems, is that it?
Yeah, problems in exploring their emotions. To meet different people, know different people. I think that the meeting between Cecile and her cello or viola player Ronald was very interesting, and it's something that it's a good way of talking about racism there too, especially when Christine Baranski, who's her mum, said it was worse, being with Ronald was worse than her being on drugs, which is a very interesting kind of thing. And I think, there's still some people who think the same way, let's say, and I think that's very important to point out that this is, but there are also people who, when I look, that's one of the things when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, that's so different now. But I know people who probably still think the same.
Okay, that's interesting. So this was really hard for me because there was very little that I thought would still matter today. I actually forgot about the rich people element to it because I got so carried away with the plot of the film that for a moment there, you just forget that this is the setting, even though it's so obvious and it's just in your face. The two things that I would say, works in 2022, I like the music. The opening scene with Placebo's Every Me and Every, even to the song Colorblind, and I would say that ending with
Bittersweet Symphony
has got to be one of the most iconic endings for a film.
Absolutely.
And it made its presence, like the scene itself is iconic because of the song. You're going to roll your eyes when I say this, but Reese Witherspoon, the fact that she's in it, it's for 2022, I still think that she could still, she may not do a film like that, but she's probably the most relevant actress even in 2022.
Well, she's the only one. Well, Sarah Michelle Gellar was going to do Cruel Intentions 3 as a series, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so she's the only one that probably agreed. I actually thought personally, Sarah Michelle Gellar was exceptionally good in it. And
100%. Yeah.
And Reese Witherspoon, because of how young she looked then, I think she was okay in playing a teenager.
Yeah.
Or something. I think that.
How old was she?
She's 22, 3.
Okay,
then.
So that's quite young. Yeah. And this was before Legally Blonde, so she hadn't even hit her peak.
Yeah, it was a couple of years before.
Yeah.
So it was, that's when, and I think that at the time, it was just like she would have been a great freshman in uni. I would have just moved it from high school to like the first year of uni, or just in the they're getting into university and college rather than just like in high school. I think, you know, we talked about, I think Selma Blair looked, to me personally, too old to be in high school. And, you know, she was like 29 at the time at age. Having said that, she played her really well. You know, that's the thing. She looked like she was playing someone really young. But on the other hand, when I was looking, I was like, oh, is she like somebody who's got, you know, you know, is just so sheltered and they haven't been out, or does she have a mental health condition? I don't know. When I look back at it, I was like, oh, you know, for somebody who's this old and he doesn't have this emotional maturity living in that place, there must be something wrong there.
I'd like to, given that you mentioned this and, you know, something that works, I would say the performances, I would say we can agree they work, and, you know, I'm going
All of them were great.
Agree with you. I remember at the time when it came out, Sarah Michelle Gellar was incredibly famous for Buffy. And this was the first time people had seen her play evil. And the commentary on the film was how amazing she was playing evil. And she nails that role so well. She's the best thing about the film, in my opinion.
I agree. I think she gave an amazing performance. She won something for it as well. I think an MTV or something.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Which brings out another iconic moment for Sarah Michelle Gellar and Selma Blair. In MTV, they won the Best Kiss.
Yes, that's
you know,
it.
And I think I remember that when it happened, and it was. I think it's just, and we were talking about the iconic moments. The two cult moments from this is the kiss between Sarah Michelle Gellar and Selma Blair, and the other one is Ryan Phillippe's backside.
Yeah, 100%.
I think these were the two iconic moments that everyone still remembers. Every time we go back, and this is like the first time when anybody talks about Cruel Intentions, these are the first two things that come into mind. You know, the kiss and
the bum. Yeah.
You know, these are the two things that happen. So, you know, and I'm sure they changed a lot of young teenagers' lives.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
100%.
Yeah.
You know, I remember, you know, that was one of my moments of discovering my sexuality, you know, seeing like Ryan Phillippe is and was freaking stunning.
Yes.
Right?
He still is, still was.
He still, exactly. And he, at the time, along with Freddie Prinze Jr., and funnily enough, you know, Sarah Michelle Gellar is still married to him.
Yeah.
The two of them were probably, you know,
the young heartthrobs of the time.
Of the 90s. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I feel as if some of the movies that they did, and maybe we could talk about in another episode of a Freddie Prinze Jr. movie, but at the time, anything that they were in, I think a lot of teenagers just gravitated towards it because they just wanted to see Ryan Phillippe. I would also say the ending is pretty iconic as well, but I would say in terms of just a quick sort of snap moment, it would be the kiss.
When I think back about Ryan Phillippe's and Reese Witherspoon's, I think it's one of the most romantic kind of scenes with Colorblind in the background. And I have revisited Colorblind now and all the lyrics of it, and it was just harrowingly beautiful, you know, just listening to it. And, you know, I was always like a Counting Crows fan up and down, but now I realized I've visited their whole catalog, and I think Colorblind, I think now I've had it on repeat now for a week. If you listen to the lyrics as well, just beautiful in that scene between, you know, her because it was Reese's first time. You mentioned about the soundtrack, which I think is a very valid point. Bittersweet Symphony, the Verve was like, you know, at the time they broke up so many times, but you know, that was an amazing, beautiful song to end with. Music, I think that the soundtrack, I think was really great. I totally agree. I think that, you know, if you notice, I'm not sure, I noticed that Ryan Phillippe's performance in it was kind of, he didn't give the whole mask straight vibe. I found his performance was like, if somebody told me that he was gay, I would have said, yeah, probably. You know, I wouldn't see that. And for me, that was an interesting, you know, lens of 2022 when I looked through it. It's like, if somebody said that he's gay, I would not have been, you know, surprised in his performance.
So are you saying that our standards, not standards, but more who we define as what in terms of sexuality has changed so dramatically
Yes,
that
yes.
from a 2022 lens, a
Yes.
character like that could sit anywhere on the
Correct.
LGBT spectrum. And
Correct.
all right, okay, cool. Okay,
And, you know,
got it,
because
yeah.
in there is a gay element there
Yeah.
as well, which is very important. Joshua Jackson
Yeah.
was playing, you know, the gay man that...
Blaine, wasn't it? That was his name?
Yes.
Blaine, yep.
That Greg McConnell
Yep.
played or slept with. And, you know, and they put like Greg McConnell as this like very, you know, harsh, you know, normal mask, whatever
Yeah.
kind of guy.
He was the mask
rude.
guy, wasn't he? Like compared to Sebastian.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So this is the prototype American jock thing
Yeah.
that does these things. But actually, Ryan Felipe wasn't in that sense. They didn't show him playing any sports. They didn't show him do anything else. He did the shooting, and that's about it.
Yeah.
While Greg McConnell with his like football stuff and things.
Just on that, I think it's a good segue to now talk about what doesn't work for 2022 with the film, and I think there's a lot to unpack here. What are your thoughts on, speaking of Greg McConnell and Blaine, and the relationship with the two of them and Sebastian's involvement in it, the language?
Absolutely, like, you know, we don't say fudgepacker anymore, so
No,
that's
we
one
don't.
thing,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
and I haven't heard it, thank God, you know, for a long time.
Yeah.
That's very important. But also, I think in this day and age, I wouldn't think it would have been a problem for someone to say he was sleeping with a guy anymore. So meaning that, you know, the whole point about Blaine sleeping with Greg McConnell was so that they can, you know, blackmail McConnell into getting through to Annette. But I think in this day and age, if somebody says, okay, well, you slept with him, that's fine. It's you know, the idea of exploring your sexuality is less frightening and less frowned upon now than before. So 20 years ago, that probably was the same, you know, that it represented a real thing where if you slept with a guy, that's just so shameful. While if you do that, well, you're exploring your sexuality. You know, there's not as much of a problem, I think.
Well, I think it's less of a problem, but I think it probably still is around. I'm only saying this from a very Australian-centric lens because, look, there's a reason as to why not a single AFL player is out. And I don't know if that has changed, but not a single. So that jock sport culture definitely tends to squash any form of conversation around sexuality. So maybe to a lesser extent, but again, I don't know what it's like for teenagers in this day and age in terms of how they express themselves. But I still think it's around though. But but maybe not to the same extent as the way the film from 1999 depicts it.
That's the thing that I suppose I meant, is that the cohort of the people that they were representing is white rich people, and you know not the ones living in I suppose a regional secluded areas, but it's people who are affluent and they have been exposed to lots of different things. And I think in this day and age, this is, you know, I don't know, if somebody comes in and you know, you see someone who's 17 who slept with another boy, or a girl who slept with another girl, it's not as exciting news as 20, 30 years ago, when there's like, oh, well, a girl has just slept with a girl, or this is, you know, something that is going to affect her in the future, her reputation or whatever. It's like, well, you know, it's the same thing.
No, I'd agree. Can we quickly talk about this film being a feminist nightmare?
I'll let you lead that one. You know, it is. I think there's lots of things, and I was looking back at it, and I was like, oh, Ryan Felipe holding Reese's hand very quickly as soon as he only just met her and she was getting off the thing. He put her down, and then he just grabbed her hand and he pulled her into somewhere. And I'm like, you know, we don't do that anymore, do we? We don't touch people without any consent in whatever sense. But he just grabbed her hand and he took her somewhere. He started talking to her, which I thought was just misogynistic, really.
The opening scene with the psychologist's daughter.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that's way worse than the hand holding.
I think this is like pre prequel of everything and saying that this is the kind of person that he is. But I think the thing I was surprised about is that Reese Witherspoon, who's supposed to be the independent, she played her very well, strong-minded young woman. You know, she really fell very quickly and allowed him to do everything that he wanted, really, even though she gave him a lot of, you know, resistance. But I thought that, you know, there's a few things that I would have changed, and I was like, no, don't touch me. She did only ask him to stop touch her when, you know, he told her that he doesn't love her or whatever in the end in that scene. But in the beginning, I mean, as soon as he told her to put her swimsuit on, she said yes, and I'm going to come with you. I'm like, you know, do we do that anymore? You know, just buy me a drink first. Like, let's go and have something. You know, before
they were teenagers though.
They were teenagers, but that also means that he went through with it because he knew that she was agreeable to it. And I think we need to say that I would have put more resistance in Annette or Reese Witherspoon before going into or delving deeper into these things.
I also think that was probably an element of them showing how charismatic he was. That's even someone like Annette would just fall for it. Another thing...
Not just Annette, anybody would.
Anybody, exactly. Another thing that I also want to talk about, just with the whole feminist nightmare thing, the way the plot that Catherine starts to get to ruin Cecile's reputation, I thought was also really horrible. And the fact that the only reason that's why she did it was because her ex-boyfriend left her for Cecile, I thought was horrible. And the language around it was I thought was really demeaning as well. I believe one of the lines that Catherine said was, Cecile will be used good.
But Catherine said something also feminist as well. She said, you know, just because I sleep with everyone and I'm whatever I am seen different than a boy does, which I think was very valid as well. Just because she slept with anyone, she wouldn't be treated the same way as Kurt does. Having said that, I don't know how, again, Court or Kurt would leave...
Court Reynolds.
Yeah,
right?
Court Reynolds would leave, you know, Catherine for Cecile, who doesn't have any, she doesn't even know how to flirt, and they're teaching her all the way. So, you know, so it just means that it was a transactional thing or a family thing, I suppose.
Yeah, probably.
And that was like, I thought that should have had a bit more of, you know, why, and I don't even know what happened to him afterwards. Yeah. You know, all that court thing, you know, there was no, I think there should have been shed more light on that story, and just so that you can understand, you know, the anger that Catherine
It's interesting
developed.
That you say that, because now it makes more sense as to the origins of the story, because what's it based off?
Dangerous Liaisons.
Yep, and what was that, set in the 1800s?
It is. It was a novel in the 1900s, I think 1870 something. So it's it's usually just a revenge kind of thing between, you know, a woman, a countess, that she wanted one of her ex-lovers to seduce someone that was going to be taken up as a wife from her ex-lover as well. Okay. So it's the same kind of thing, but as it transplants itself onto this day and age, they tried to make it a high school thing, because this was like adults. And I think we talked about it now, that not many, you know, it's not very legal what they were doing with youngsters. And so they had to stop at a certain point. But the only thing and we talked about, is how Selma Blair was just very inexperienced for somebody who's, her character anyway, you know, who's supposed to be like a 7. She was supposed to be even younger than Catherine, which she didn't look younger than Catherine as well. And so she was inexperienced in such a way. In the original novel, she was raised in a convent, so you can understand why she was very sheltered.
And I guess it would also make sense, the whole transactional agreement between Court and her, because I'm guessing in the 1800s that was probably how a
very religious based. And this is why, so this is what was absent in the new one. You know, that's why I thought, well, you know, a girl at her age who's 17 or or whatever age she was supposed. She was a teenager. You would have think that she would have watched MTV. She knows all this kind of flirtation tactics, and this. And even Christine Baranski didn't look as as strict as a parent. So I thought she would have been able to be more exposed to the adult world, rather than what she played, which is like very sheltered. I mean, she did have a dollhouse, which is weird as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's where she kept her, the letters. But the other thing I was like, now they did have letters then. Why? Because they didn't have a lot of phones. Imagine now, if you had a phone, or you would have easily, recorded everything, sent texts and whatever. And she probably wouldn't have been found out as well, but she would have also been able to, look things up on the phone.
You're quite intrigued by the Cecile character. Why do you reckon?
I think it's because this is the only one I didn't get the interacting with the other characters. I think we talked about her physical image. I had to go back and understand why someone who's her age, even at the time, doesn't know how to do most things and how to approach things. She was like
Sheltered.
Very sheltered, but it didn't show. Like she was only showing it through her behavior, and there was no backstory to tell us why she was sheltered, for whatever reason it was. And this is the thing that confused me from the beginning. And I had to look back, like, how does a 17-year-old, how does Catherine, who's in the same environment, can sleep with that many people, or Annette even, who's a virgin and says, okay, I don't want to sleep with that many people.
But she's still mature.
She knows mature enough emotionally to know, while this one isn't. And even when she had the, sex with Sebastian afterwards, she was like a child.
Yeah, it was pretty gross,
I thought,
actually.
I was like, put off at how she played it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's just disgusting.
I also think that Selma Blair put on the voice, everything about it was very, it was like the childish nature of her character was a bit disturbing. Yeah, you're
that's
right.
That was just so off-putting in that. And she did, as I said, if she was, I don't know, 10 years old, she was a teenager, fair enough. Even then, I would have been really put off about how, somebody like this would behave afterwards, like literally a child.
I was a teenager when this came out, and I remember this film made waves in my school because it was just, well, firstly, I think the cast was famous, but then at the same time, I think no one had seen people do what this film did. And I'm going to be honest, at the time, I thought this was one of the greatest films ever. And my friends and I, we laughed at a lot of the things that we saw. I remember specifically laughing at the scene where Cecile comes home after her night with Sebastian and her hair's a mess. And her mum's going, Cecile, we need to get ready. And I, thinking that was absolutely hilarious. I was mortified watching it now because what happened was a non-consensual act between two teenagers, really.
But was it non-consensual? Did she, she knows she was going to...
He gave her Long Island iced tea. So firstly, because remember he...
Yes.
So he drugged her.
Yeah.
And he took advantage of her.
Okay.
How come we didn't see this as a problem back in the 90s?
Consent has evolved to something that we can understand now. There was very, clear boundaries on where you should and shouldn't cross. And at the time, I think, these boundaries were just being explored. And, so people still used to get drunk and I'm sure this is like, 20, 30 years ago, even longer, it used to happen all the time. And that's the sad fact, that a lot of women, and men, have had this problem. You get into drinking, drugs, whatever it is, and you wake up and the next day you just either can't recall what happened or you don't understand what happened. And either way that, bad. And this is, hopefully it doesn't happen as much now.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a state affair at the time.
Yeah.
And we were witnessing some of it, maybe sometimes, and we didn't think about it because that's what the good thing about consent now is starting this conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
About how we can get consent and how consent happens and what is right and wrong in that sense. And I think this is why we've evolved and grade, which is the same thing where I said, like, now I don't see if Blaine slept with Greg McConnell, that would have been a problem. Because they would have said, yes, we can do each other. That's like, it's not exploring yourself and your sexuality, which is just normal now.
Yeah. I'd like to now talk about what you would change about the film. So let's just assume that it's 2022 and this film was to happen today. What would you change?
The actors that play were amazing. I think that the age of them, I just pushed up the script into it being in university. Because I think a lot of time when we see actors and we see they don't represent the same kind of image that we see every day. That's kind of harmful for young kids and teenagers. If you see, even Ryan Felipe there looks good for his age, and he looks younger than what he really was. But and again, I have to say, like Selma Blair, like that doesn't look like an 18-year-old. And if a 14 or 15, and a 15-year-old who looks like this is what a 15-year-old should look like.
She was almost double her age.
She was 29.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm saying this is just wrong in sense of if a 15-year-old looks at it and says this is what a 15-year-old should look like, and she starts modifying her body or modifying her face or whatever, I think that's harmful. And I think playing actors with the right age group, I think Reese was good.
She's always good.
She's always good. Yeah. Ryan Felipe was good. Even Sarah Michelle Gellar, she was good. She's actually the youngest out of all three. At the time of the movie, and
she would have been 22, I believe, right. And Reese would have been 23, I think.
Yes, they're a year apart, old. So I think Reese is 76, Sarah Michelle is 77, and Ryan Felipe is 75.
Okay.
So they were like a year difference between them.
Yeah, because I remember when Sarah Michelle Gellar did Buffy, she was 20.
She could play that age, and that was good.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing I would change. The script, I would have changed it into a different time in their lives, just like a year older, maybe, or 2 years older in university. I think that was, to me, would be more believable than high school. The other thing I would, explore other stories that were in, the gay story. I would have wanted to explore it even more, and the interaction between those characters and Court, which I still don't get what's happened to him. He's like, well, what's happened with him? How did he, get to meet Cecile? Was it a debutante ball or something that they met, or is it just a family meeting? I don't know. And how did Catherine know all about it?
If this was, say, filmed in 2022, that opening scene where we have Sebastian pretty much looking back at the psychologist when she's, hammering her glass window, going, you're going to pay for this. And he's got this really cheeky smile on. How do you reckon they would have handled a scene like that in 2022? Because I'm thinking you wouldn't dare do that now.
This is the thing, in the beginning when they set it, I thought he must be a sociopath.
Yeah.
If you do this kind of behavior, and this is where one of the other confusing things, but afterwards he was so soft and gentle with Reese Witherspoon and had his kind of love, but
he was falling in love with her though.
Falling in love with her.
Yeah.
And this is the point, like, when did he? Because he was upset that they couldn't be together. Yeah, I thought, well, you just didn't tell her you loved her before that, when she was, reading the book, and he came up to her and said, oh, tell me why we can't be together. And, I have feelings for you. I was like, well, I don't think he did say before that he had feelings for her. It was just kind of a sexual attraction, if anything. He didn't do anything sweet and pleasant together to show that he does actually value her and love her. He only said, I love you afterwards, or, when he was waiting for her on the escalator, and he said, I'm in love.
Yeah.
That's the only time he said it, which was after the whole thing.
By the way, that's another iconic scene, the waiting on top of the escalator.
Yeah.
I think that's another a 90s.
And that's where Colorblind was amazing. It's like if you look at it, and it's actually the whole song was played from the beginning to the end. It was like 3 minutes, because I know now 3 minutes something, so it was like 3 minutes of pure bliss, I think, as a romantic scene between two actors and two characters who were married. Yes. And you can see like how, when they were doing the thing, it's actually believable.
Yeah, there was chemistry there.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that was just beautiful. This is why I think it's so beautiful. The song was great, and it played from start to finish, and everything in the lyric was beautiful. It was just like a perfect love scene, love-making scene.
I've got a question for you. Do you reckon we should have seen more people of colour in this movie, or should we have not cast people of colour because the characters are so horrible that it would have just been better off the way it was?
I think that, it's representing the time of the 90s, and I think that was probably an accurate presentation of the time then, when, white people and in their cohort, even though it's New York was probably less because it's more diverse. Yeah. But if it was like, I don't know, in the southern states or something else, that would have been accurate.
But what about now? If we were to make that film now, would you have cast a person of color in any of those roles?
Of course. I think it would have been, easy to cast any, even Sebastian, if he was black, that would have been great. Yeah. Okay. It would have been easy because they're stepchildren. So, maybe Sebastian would be black and Catherine would be white. Even then, the Asian representation is not there, apart from being a maid. So I think if we were trying to, be more diverse, then yes, I would obviously, put more diverse characters in the mix. Especially, I think I'd have chosen Sebastian, to be, dark skinned or black, and the rest would, or even Catherine.
The reason that's why I'm asking is because is it a double-edged sword? Because those characters are so horrible. They're just not nice people, right? And they are, they're probably, in terms of character representation for teen movies, these are incredibly cruel, mean people. That's why I was wondering, is it a double-edged sword to cast people of color in roles like this? But I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I think in this day and age, it is. And I think, there's still people of color who are not nice.
100%.
So it's not like people who, just because of your color skin, you're just given a carte blanche that you're going to be nice all the time. I don't think so.
You're right.
And vice versa. If somebody's white, doesn't mean they're bad. It's just, that they're different. And there's there's a big spectrum. But I think it's in terms of visibility, I think that's important. There's only one black character in the whole thing, and he wasn't treated well anyway, which is why I think if it's a good to be a main character and be black too, but that would have been, even if they were evil, I think it means that they have the same value as all the white people that were playing the character.
To wrap up, your favorite bit of the film?
Ryan Phillippe's bomb.
I've got maybe two. I really like the monologue that Catherine gives to Sebastian, where she goes, I'm the Marsha effing Brady of the Upper East Side. That monologue, I thought that was SMG in her element, and she nailed that. My second favorite bit about the film is the Christine Baranski character, and even though it's so bad, how she delivers that line to Ronald when he gets fired.
I agree. There are comedic moments that are quite good as well, and they're sparse, but they were really intense and good. So I'll add actually Colorblind. That's like a great song, and the soundtrack. The two, the Verve and Counting Crows were amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Abs, for unpacking this controversial 1999 film, Cruel Intentions, with myself. You have been watching The Film Whisperers here on Ben TV.
Thank you.